Today's topic which I will be addressing is brain and mind, some scientific and philosophical aspects. Now this is actually the picture what I have shown you is me and I. That is my mental reality. Actually there is physical reality, because without physical reality all these pictures would not have been possible. But then if this physical reality ceases to exist, and still if I exist, then this mental reality will be with me. So that is the beauty, that is the way we think about, and that is our brain, and that we will be discussing today. It's a wonderful topic, and many a times, though I have not studied the physiology or the anatomy in great details, but many a time I had questions in my mind that well, what is memory, what is understanding, how do we remember, how do actually an image is created in our brain, how do we know all these things, what exactly happens. So previously actually people used to think that with a heart they can actually win others and all, but then we now restrict itself to our brain. Without brain actually nothing works. So with this brief introduction I will start. So I will go through lot of classical people who have actually contributed to the brain, and I will show you some of the books actually which you can go forward and read it yourself. One of the bestseller international book which I have shown here is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. He has received a Nobel Prize in economics, but he is a psychologist he is a professor in psychology by his academic discipline. And in this particular picture, see, just concentrate on that particular picture. Now, as you concentrate on the picture, so many things comes to your mind. Really, so many things come to your mind, that the girl is angry, the girl is anxious, the girl is shouting, she is really furious. So it just comes all spontaneously to you. But then when you see the numbers below, say 2457 into 12457 into 2143, you don't know the answer. Maybe there are some wizards like Sakuntala who can give the answer, but for normal mortals, so it's quite difficult, because our brain is not tuned to perform this abstract computation as it is. So this was one line of thought, but then again this thinking fast and slow are not embedded in our brain. They are metaphorical segregations, and the author, that is Daniel Kahneman, has made it bluntly clear in his book, and that is the way he has done. So this is one aspect of it. Now just think that somebody just now said that we have come into being through physical contact. That is very fine, but more specifically, we have come into being this complex body, this mind, this our personality, our achievements. All this started with the fusion of just two cells, two sex cells, sperm and the egg. They are two single cells, and ultimately what happened is that these two cells combine to form the zygote, and then they form a particular type of cells called stem cells. Stem cells are something like, it is like like electron, proton and quarks and all make the universe. Whatever the universe will be, whatever elements are there, inside that we find these particular elements. So these stem cells are actually the basic thing which get classified into different types of stem cells. They are called pluripotent stem cells. Either they are called omnipotent or unipotent, means they get specialized. They divide, they multiply, and they form specialized cells. And in that particular way, actually, we have the muscular tissues, we have the cardiac muscles, and these are, what is a tissue actually? A group of, I am explaining all these things because I feel that we have a heterogeneous audience, and all may not be aware, or may have been studied. All of us have studied all these things in our high school, but may not have gone in details or may not remember it. So just for a division purpose, see, we are made up of a trillions of cells, lot of cells. Cells are getting formed and cells are dying, and a number of cells actually group together to form a single functional unit. They form a tissue. A number of tissue forms an organ. So this is the way it classifies. So we have different types of tissues, and then in our brain we have a cell which is called neuron. We have a lot to say about it, but this is the particular cell which is responsible for all the thoughts, for all our awareness, for all our consciousness, for all our love, for all our sympathy, whatever you say, these cells communicate, and how they form the reality, how they form the mental picture, that is the topic which we will try to ponder in this brief presentation. So we will go into details, but these, as I was telling, that these cells, these neuron cells, we will discuss the structure. They are actually attached one adjacent to another. They are attached through a connection. These you are seeing that there are some fibrous structures, and these are called dendrites, and this is called action. We will come to the structure, and they form a chain, like a whatever you are seeing here. They form a chain, and these chains run a lot of elaborate length. It's a very vast length, so that it's a complex interconnecting structure, and ultimately what happens is that you get that forms our brain. Now, how people studies brain, that you will see that nobody has gone to neuron first itself. Nobody has deciphered that the neuron is the brain cells from the first day itself. But then how people come to. So there are various ways. This is one of the modern techniques of imaging, where if you have actually, I wanted to show you one of my pictures which I have taken for when I was doing my fMRI for my spinal cord. Incidentally, the first plate shows my brain also, but I could not get it yesterday, so I could not give you today, I could not show you today. But then I collected these pictures from some other sources, and you can see that how actually we have the brain, the internal structure, and how it is looking as whole together. We will come back to all this. Now, people initially started studying long back. How they studied, they took slices of the brain. This is not like cutting the mutton in a shop, butcher shop, but they took very fine slices, and then they examined those slices under microscope, and they studied their structure, and then they put dye, and then they have actually seen how the dye progresses through this structure, and then ultimately they made certain conclusions. But then these are very old techniques. Nowadays people go through the genetic level, and we will come to it. We will see briefly how people describe these things. Now we will again come through the gross structure, and I will be showing maybe same things in different parts. Maybe you will be seeing same, but that is the way actually I think that will be good, so that you will get exposed to the full thing again and again. If I just show you once, it may not be. See, we have two parts in our brain. Specifically they have names, but we will come to it afterwards. Then we have the right part and the left part. And it has been found experimentally that the right part controls the left part of our body, and left part controls the right part of our body, and this has been established. And then the brain evolved. Modern science says that the evolution process is same either for humans or for animals or for any insects. It is same evolution process, just the times vary, and that we will discuss afterwards. But then in human, the brain in our frontal area, the prefrontal cortex, it has got expanded so much that it started getting folded, and they all are kept inside our skull. So that is what you are seeing here, that it is folded and they are kept inside our skull, and these are responsible for sending signals throughout our body, and we will try to understand how this happens in fair details in succeeding slides. Now this is a particular very interesting picture. This is called actually homunculus. So homunculus, human homunculus. So what it says is that which part of our body, which particular physical part, like our fingers, our tongue, which has maximum sensitivity, which affects our brain maximum. See, which are thin, they are actually we don't get so much sensation. Which has been exaggerated, like our tongue, our chin, our hands, our cheeks, our ears. These are the locations actually where which affects our brain very much. So this is a picture of that. Before we move on to the anatomical portion, and then I was showing you that one book was Kahneman's Thinking Fast/Slow. There is one more book which you should read, and that is, though it is a fairly old book, though it was written some 10, 15, 20 years back, but still I find that that book is good enough for a starting point. You can always read advanced book afterwards, but that book is good enough to get an initial overview of the fantastic organ, our brain. So in that particular book, V.S. Ramchandran, he is a scientist there, he has given effect. Now he has given an effect. You can see that there are two figures, first figure and the second figure. Now he has made a statistical survey asking people that if I give you two words, one called Booba and another called Kiki, which figure you will attribute to Booba and which figure you will attribute to Kiki. This is a psychological test, but well, it has been done by many people, and it has been found that actually statistically, we will not do it here, but it has been found statistically, actually the Booba is attached to the first figure. So the frequency is very high, though it is not 100%. We have a few people attaching to that. So what happens is that, what is when you say Booba, our mouth actually pronounces the word Booba. So it is actually a continuum, and the figure also, it gives a cue to our brain that it is a continuum. So this continuum and continuum matches, and then our brain actually directs us to actually make this particular decision that Booba should be attributed to the first figure. Kiki in that particular phase, Kiki, there is a break, and in the figure actually also you sign that there are some breaks. So in that particular way, it is attributed to them. So this is a statistical thing, but anyway, this was discussed in that book and I found it interesting, so I shared with you. Now let us slowly sink into anatomical aspects of the same, of our brain, and let us see what are the different scientific names, how many parts are there, what are the functions of the parts, and can we identify certain things. Let us see what are the things which are there. So the structure of the brain. So you can see that brain is grossly, I will go on throwing lot of figures, you try to just see that if you remember certain things, that we have actually something called this is labeled as frontal lobe. We will say some functioning of the frontal lobe and all I will discuss, but this part is called, this is actually what is called the functional frontal lobe, and here we have the parietal lobe, here we have the occipital lobe, here it is called cerebellum, this full area, this is the brain stem, and this is the temporal lobe. So these are all having certain functions. We will show you in a much better way as we do. Then we have other areas like olfactory bulb, which accounts for our smell, and then we have optic chiasm, we have pituitary glands. So these are various things you will see, these are various structures, they are names, they have certain functions, and we will be discussing few of them in details. I will not go to the details just now, but when I discuss each of this part, we will go to the details, and then you can actually get some of the functioning of the brain, because all we can't cover, neither you will appreciate. So we will go to some of the functioning, and then we can see that how as a whole the organ functions. So these are some of the pictures, the consolidated. We have shown part by part, and I have now consolidated the picture, and I will show you a few pictures which are consolidated, which may have certain names. We will come back to each of them as we discuss. So these are various anatomical pictures. We have the left side, right side, mid sagittal side, back side. We have different sections, and you can see how folded it is, how many much layers are there. It is divided into two parts, and there are connections, and there were experiments actually where doctors snapped the interconnection between. They didn't die, but their behavior really changed when there is a connection snap between these two hemispheres of the brain. So these are quite interesting things which we can see. So as I was saying, that there are various areas of the brain which are responsible for various functional aspects. So for example, we will come back to an animation of that. So you can see some areas are marked here, like what your arm hand is doing. See, there are certain adjacent area, face and speech and hearing and language. So there is, so sometimes what may happen that you may understand a language, you may know a language, but you may not decipher its meaning. So there are certain areas in the brain which are specially used for deciphering the meaning. They are called Wernicke area. Then we have the language area, Broca's area, and hearing area, then vision area. So if our eye is perfectly okay, but there is a damage in this part of our brain, we can't see. Irrespective of we have fantastic eyes, we can't see. If in some accident actually we have a damage for a certain part of our sight, for example hearing part, though our ear as an organ is perfectly fine, we can't hear because our brain will not interpret. So these are the some fantastic things which we just imagine and which we think, and this I think we will show you as I go through certain slides, and you can see I am showing you same slide so that you go on seeing the same picture again and again, and maybe a few of them you try to you can recollect after we do it. So here is a good anatomical video. So you can see, I will pause the video. So we have the frontal lobe. This is a fantastic colored video. This is a frontal lobe, this is a parietal lobe, occipital lobe, cerebellum, brain stem, temporal lobe. Now if I go forward, you see that they have shown as a cross section of the particular thing. If I go, so you can see the both sides, and you can see here frontal lobe, cerebrum, brain cell, temporal lobe, and then you can see various. I am sorry, I have just but still I think you can get a glimpse of it, that eye movement is allocated to one particular area, higher mental functions are there, speech is there, vocabulary and voluntary motor function is there, hearing is there, coordination is there, association is there, vision is there. So all these are areas in the brain which are dedicated. And sometimes what happens is that, for example, if a person in a war, this Ramchandran has actually discussed in one of his books called The Phantoms of Our Brain. That is, he has written 4 or 5 books, all are quite interesting, but you can go and read all of them. I have read it, so it is quite good. So in that he has said that one person has actually in a war lost his one arm, but then though the arm is not there, the signals from the lost area, sometimes his memory is there of that previously he used that arm, so sometimes that memory, that signals over, it crosses the area of the arm and it goes to the sensational area and he feels his arm. Similarly, he has a pain in because of he has lost his arm. So he's tried lot of anatomy, a lot of physiological things to actually get rid of pain, taking medicines, doing lot of things. But ultimately, Ramchandran describes in his Telltale Brain that he made a box with 3 mirrors, and he said that okay, you rotate your one hand inside the box and you see it, go on seeing it. So you will feel that your other hand is also there. So in that way, actually, it happened that the result, the conclusion was shown. The experiment was done and it was taken in the lab, and it was shown that the pain actually reduced or vanished. So these are some of the things which are happening and which people can actually do, and you can also explore all these things in due course. So we have a brain. All animals do have brain, every brain. And now modern theories, as I was going on saying you, that we have a book called 7.5 Chapters on Brain. I will be showing you that book. And in that, Lisa Fridas Barrett, Philman Barrett has actually has shown that the process through which a brain evolves is common to all species. It is not if humans have a special process, so we are more intelligent, and these are all actually conclusions, but maybe these are in 2020 based on certain study. She is a psychologist, she has studied, and these are certain inferences that many neurologists have seen. But again, all these things are actually always put to test again and again, and people are trying to get insight into this particular organ because it is such a complex thing. So let us see why the brain is so wonky. What do you think about the weight of the brain? So we have seen all these things many times, so I will not spend much time, but again and again, if you see, at least you will remember that there are some areas in the brain, maybe in the just in the back side you have the parietal touch, smell and taste, you have the occipital of vision and all those things. So you have a lot of things, and then we will see it. For example, let us see sheep's brain. A similar brain is of goat's brain also. So you can see that though it is not exactly similar, some areas are having same functionality. It has been tested, and it has been found out that they perform similar functions. So you can see that sagittal view of this particular sheep's brain, it has been labeled accordingly. Lateral view is also shown, and for comparison, actually they have put the human brain in the side so that we can have a comparison of which area. Actually, this orientation, the way it is actually in the back side, in the front side, parietal lobe, top, bottom, this structure is homomorphic. They are preserved. They are actually mapped from one because the process is same. That is what they are telling. That process is same. So whether it is cow or whether it is goat or whether it is horse or elephant or whatever it is, the areas may be big or small, but everything will be in approximately the same locations. So we have the cat's brain, we have the dog's brain, and you can see that there are some difference in how they function. So we have a bird's brain, we have a bat's brain, we have a raccoon's brain. So you can see that for example a bird brain is fairly smooth. Now it is not complex, but raccoon's brain has some modulations. But again, bat's brain is also not modulated so much. It has no folding so much. So it is not so complex. It can have certain complex functions. So human versus chimpanzee. So we can go on comparing and we can go on saying, see, Broca's area is there, Wernicke's area is there, meaning is there, you can see, and you can see about chimpanzee's area and the human area, and you can see that there are differences in the area. If you expand this figure, you can actually see. Now we have seen all these more anatomical features. We will again come to the explanation after some time. Now let us have a understanding of the basic cell which actually makes the interconnection in the brain. Actually, this interconnection form the model of modern computational thinking also. We have the neural network, that is a model which is used in our computers to make machines learn. So what happens is that, what is a neural network? Lot of neurons get interconnected together, few billion neurons get interconnected together with few billion neurons. So what is a neuron? A neuron is a cell. Like any cell, it has lot of structures, it has a body, it has certain synapse, it has certain ending. So you can see that you need not actually bother much about the details of the structure, but you can at least give it a feel that it is somewhat different from what we have learnt in our classes for an animal cell and a plant cell. It is something, animal cell was something like a circular thing, or some continuous thing. A plant cell was something like a hexagonal thing. Do we remember those? But then I should have put those pictures actually. But then neuron is something different. Now it is made for actually communication. You can see how they are attaching, how they are transmitting. That we will discuss. So it actually one neuron attaches to adjacent neuron by a connection called synapse. It is not for example, when there is actually either a sensation is there in our body or a command is there from the brain, it is transmitted through this neuron and a signal is generated. Now how the signal is generated? It is generated as a chemical potential. So when the chemicals are released, certain chemicals get accumulated in the endings of the dendrite, and when amount of accumulation exceeds a certain limit, it passes the chemicals. We will see how it works. I will show you a small video on that. So these are some of the pictures. So anyway, you know that something called a white matter axiom, these are called then the gray matter or dendrite portion. So these are all there. So this is actually, you just enjoy and see, these are all dendrites, and you see how actually the animation shows. I hope you can see, and how actually the neurotransmitters transmit the objects, how it goes inside, and actually how the signals get communicated between adjacent brain. So this is the way actually we have the communication in our brain. It is not as simple as it is shown to you. It is a very complicated process, and people are actually still understanding genetically how the things are happening. But then you do understand that we have a comparative neuroanatomy of various types of animals, various types of species, and we can compare the brain in various ways, and it has been found that they are actually homomorphic in the sense that actually they transmit. They are somewhat functionally, you can superimpose this area of this human to this area of a elephant. So that those are possible. Now I will go to a bit of academics. These are all actually, you will see it. It is from this brain, telltale brain. I learned actually the brain from this particular book. I was so interested, I read it for 3-4 times, that particular book, and you may also find it interesting. It is written in a very simple language, though the thinking fast and slow is not so easy reading. But again, 7.5 chapters on brain is very easy reading. You can finish it very fast. So anyway, so telltale brains says that how actually our brain works. So it starts with the cerebral cortex. So what is the cerebral cortex? Cerebral cortex is the two portions. So you can see these two split portions here. These are called the cerebral cortex, and cortex has grown so much that it has convoluted. And since it has convoluted, means what do we mean by convolution? It has gone inside, and it has too much of the material has got embedded, got inside a small volume, which is our skull, and actually it is balanced through various liquids, and it is protected by a hard skull. So it is the seat of our understanding, it is everything. So that is the cerebral cortex. It is split into two hemispheres, and the cortex has grown so much, as we have seen that. Now from these areas, as we have seen, nerves come. What are the nerves? They are actually chains of these neurons. They come, and they come like, you have a lot of interconnections in your house. You have bulbs, you have tubes, you have heater, you have fridge, everything is there, and from everywhere wire are coming, and together they forms a bundle, and it is go to KCB line. So it is go to the main line, you form the bundle. So that is the lifeline. So that is somewhat like that you have for this particular thing, that all from everywhere these neural connections are there. It connects the different areas of the brain, and it actually gives us to the various organs and communication. We sense, the sense signal goes to our brain. The brain interprets, it initiates an action, and it after initiating action, it sends a signal to our hand. Also it sends a signal to a certain part of the brain, that we will see, and these two are compared, so it forms a feedback loop. So that is quite interesting. And you can see that it enters the skull through there is something called a bulbous area, and this is further divided into three parts, which are called medulla, pons, and midbrain. So these are divided into three parts, and medulla and nuclei on the floor of they are lying, and they have different functions, like our breathing, our blood pressure, our body temperature. These are all controlled by these pons. And then we have cerebellum, which controls the fine coordination of movement, and it is involved, it is responsible for our balancing act, and our posture and all those things. So you see that how different areas are there. Then what is there? Then we have, as our cortex sends signals, it comes to the muscle, the spinal cord, and a copy of the signal, like a CC mail, where you send a email, you make a CC to somebody. Like a CC mail, the signal goes to the cerebellum. Cerebellum is the area which we have seen that it is in this during this area. So it goes to the cerebellum, and then the cerebellum receives the sensory feedback from the muscle and joins the receptor through the body. Thus the cerebellum is able to actually detect any mismatch that has occurred, and it then creates an appropriate signal to take up what action should be taken. This is the feedback mechanism through which actually our brain works. Now I have made a graphics to make your understanding better. This is called the cerebral cortex. So you can see that our cerebral cortex is the full brain. The full brain with all its division, its cerebral cortex, and each hemisphere based on its location is actually divided into occipital, temporal, parietal, and frontal. So occipital is process for visual processing, temporal for higher perceptual functions like face recognition and all those things, parietal for higher perceptual functions like for in association with amygdala and hippocampus. It goes through various computation. I have typed it wrong. The parietal is actually dealing with certain computational aspect, and then we have the frontal, that is the planning and actions, which goes in the frontal part. And again in amygdala we have certain things like amygdala is again sub-classified into two parts, but angular gyrus and supraangular gyrus. And angular gyrus is responsible for arithmetic action, and supraangular gyrus is responsible for skilled action. So this is the full way of classification. And there is one more thing. So you might have noticed that, see, when somebody is taking an ice cream, you feel like taking an ice cream. If somebody is watching if you have no other work and you are seeing that somebody is watching listening to a song, if you song is quite this thing, eating works better. But if you have a visual cue, so you intend, actually you are directed to imitate that. So this imitating aspect is due to a particular neuron called mirror neuron, and it actually is responsible, what Ramchandran says, it is responsible for actually the culture development as a whole. We can read each other's intention due to this functioning of this neural neuron. Now, so that is what Ramchandran says. That was in a lot long back in 2010 and all. So it is a long book. It is a book which has been published quite long back. Recently in 2020, a new book has come, and I just read it a week back. And this has been written. It is called as 7.5 Aspects of Brain. So what is it? It has been written by Lisa Friedman Barrett. And actually, why it is called 7.5? Because 7 aspects is very well known. According to her, she knows it very well, and half is actually something which is still fuzzy, and she need to conclude it in future works. So that is what explanation she gives for that particular book. So brain, according to her book, what she says, that brain is not meant for thinking, not meant for any higher thoughts. Brain is basically meant to perform body budgeting. All of us understand budgeting. We have certain amount of resources, whether money or anything, and we try to optimize the resources so that it benefits us maximum. So this is the prime objective. Modern brain supervises more than 600 muscles. It has balanced hormones. It pumps blood in the order of say 2000 gallons per day. It regulates our energy requirements of billions of cells for around 72 years, if you consider it as our average lifespan. So there is no purpose of brain's evaluation. We should not ask, according to her, we should not ask why brain evolved. That is not the question to be asked. Brain's most important job, according to her, is not rationality, not emotions, not imagination, creativity and empathy. These are what she says are like side effects. You get a bonus out of it. But the control of our body is the main aspect, and as a part of it, like we pass electricity to a wire, we get magnetic field. Okay, that has been an effect. But our intention is to get the connection so that we get the electricity in some other location. But this field which is formed, it is just a broad analogy. Don't take it very literally. But I am saying that something we get due to some action, something we get bonus. That's what I try to mean. So mental capacities, the various of our mental capacities are consequences of our brain managing our body budget. Everything brain creates, from the memories to hallucinations to ecstasy to scene, is a part of this particular mission. It optimizes the body budget. That's what it says. So newer methods allow scientists to peer actually what exactly, as I showed you in the first slide, that people used to cut the brain and slice, and then they used to examine under the microscope or more electron microscope or whatever it is, and they used to put dye and they used to see how it is. So that was a morphological way of analyzing the brain. But now what happens is that we see that the brain is examined at the genetic level. People are understanding which genes are actually a number of for example, they work in coordination to perform a certain objective. So different species of animals have same genes. Neurons have same evolutionary origin. So these are the conclusions of this study. So evolution does not add layer. What adds layer? Because we want to make our body budget. So you may say that this is another way of saying what previously people used to say, but maybe that in a way it is looking like that, but when you go to the deeper aspect, maybe the interpretation will change. And further, one more thing is that these are put in a popular book and based on certain research aspects which are given in the appendix of the book. But then again, these are open to verification by lot of neuroscientists around the world, and people will study them and definitely they will refine, or that is the way actually science progress. So genetic makeup of different parts of the brain. So there are aspects, there are things that which are looking similar or maybe dissimilar genetically, which are looking similar genetically, maybe looking dissimilar in physically. So what is the conclusion which is formed? The manufacturing process of all the brains of across the species are seen. Now it is an interesting thing to see that actually, as I have already said you, that brain is a chain of networks. It is a network of a huge complexity. What is the complexity? 128 billion individual neurons. They are crisscrossing. They are communicating. Each neuron is communicating with billions of neurons. These are all statistical figures. Billions doesn't always mean figures. It may vary, but in general, it is a very large number. So a complex brain has more memories. For example, when a signal is passed frequently through a particular, so brain forms, we will come to it and we will see that they forms patterns. And when the same pattern is used many number of times, it forms a memory, a long lasting memory, long term memory. We will come back to it. And one thing quite interesting is that you will see that in octopus, all of us know, at least have seen octopus in picture or in TV. Octopus has a very complex brain. Its brain is distributed throughout its body and it's very intelligent. It can actually solve puzzles. People have found out that it can solve puzzles and it can open its own aquarium and get out of it. So it is a very intelligent species. Then she has also went forward in discussing actually the technique of how brain learns, how brain actually not evolves, how brain progresses and it gets complex. It is through, it learns different things. It is through a process of actually tuning and pruning. Tuning is strengthening the interconnection between neurons, creating neural patterns. That same pattern, no? For example, you are going through from your house to market. So there are several paths from your house to market, and maybe if you are new to the location, you will be perplexed that if the person who is already staying there, he may take you one day through one path, another day through another path, and you will be perplexed. What is this fellow is doing? He is taking us from various paths. But now, if you go through all the paths, same path again and again, you will see that you will remember that path. That is called tuning. And if you don't use a certain part of the brain, a certain part of the network, its functionality gets eroded, it gets lost, and that is called pruning. A child learns certain things very fast. Now I read somewhere when my child was born, I read somewhere that actually you can teach multiple languages to the child. I thought of experimenting it. So I said that okay, I will speak to my child in Bengali, and my wife will speak to my child in Malayalam. And if somebody else I get, I will ask them to speak, that particular person to speak in Hindi. Let me see. And English is, of course, we all communicate with English, so he will pick up that English also. So I went on doing that particular process, and at last it was really, if you meet my child anytime, or maybe somebody said that, I don't know in start right how he was. Now he is good in Bengali. He literally talks well with my all family members. He is good in Malayalam. He communicates like a Keralite actually. He communicates and he is from here, but he communicates in Malayalam very fluently, and he is good in English and Hindi also. So the brain has actually used all this because when we are young, no, we have lot of new connections, new patterns getting formed, and that is the way actually brain. So and our brain actually is good in predicting. We can actually, you can see that before certain persons, you know, they come out with a certain opinion based on your past experience with that person. It may not happen always, but maybe in most of the situation you can predict. Or actually what is said that our brain actually, when we do an action, brain has already decided about the action few seconds before that. So the brain is a predicting organ. And brain helps us in abstracting. It makes summaries of summaries. Now because we have so much exposure, we are getting exposed to so much data. We are going to market, we are going to office, we are going to our friends, we are speaking with our relatives, and we are bombarded with lot of data, a lot of different feelings, and our brain is summarizing. So much data actually we should get mad of all this data, but then brain is abstracting. It is forming patterns, and we try to make multi-sensory summaries. So these are some of the things. So as I have already said that our memory, how it encodes, it forms pattern, it is stored in the way of pattern, and when you retrieve it, you try to recall it, you make it strengthen. That is the way actually the memories work. So there are some things, memory has been actually classified in this literature as short-term memory, or working memory, and long-term memory. Short-term memory, like for example, you went to certain shop and you kept certain item there in the table of that particular shop, and you remember that you kept it there, or you forgot that. It doesn't matter. But that is called short-term memory. But then where you studied in your childhood, which school and where it is located, or what concepts you might have studied if you like some teacher, this forms long-term memory. So these are actually memories are formed by how well you retrieve it. The more you focus it, more patterns are formed, more you retrieve it. So there are these are all actually discussed before, so I will not. So this I skip this particular activity. I thought that I will give an activity where actually I am showing lot of pictures and it forms a short-term memory, and I'll ask all of you to actually write down in your paper how many you remember after seeing it for one time, 1 minute. But then I think let me skip this because already I have got offshooted the allotted time. Now I will go to the next one. This is called optical illusion. Optical illusions are something which are created in our brain but which are not actually as it is. Let us see some examples. So before we go to examples, let us just revise how our eyes work. We all know it, but then we have a lens, we have a pupil, and signals actually focus on the retina, and then the signals are light rays focus on the retina. They form a signal, and these are actually encoded and pass through the blood vessels, and they are passed through to our brain. And then there are two types of cells. One is called as rods and cones. So bright areas are called which detect bright light is called cones, and dark areas, dark intensity is detected by rods, and ultimately we form the full figure of that. So these are actually the way actually we capture a particular van. It is moving in the road, and we get it inside our brain. So that is the way actually this slide shows how actually our brain try to perceive it. But still we don't know actually. We know that it is called pattern, and we know that, but still how it is represented in our brain, it is actually not yet known to us. So again, these activities I am skipping, and these are some of the optical illusions. You can see that we have two white circles on the two sides, and I may ask you that whether they are of equal size. So how many feel that they are of equal size? Can anybody say me? Do you feel that they are of equal size? Anybody?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, all of you say yes. So yeah, correct, they are of equal size. So if you see that, if you actually what happens is that if you keep those circles with respect to the surrounding, sometimes what happens is that this appears smaller. So that is the way. Similarly, we have another thing like this length of the line.
Yeah.
So it appears that the middle one is longer and the first one is shorter. But then if you put a line, it appears both are same. So that are all there. Now last thing, which second last thing actually, two more things I will discuss. Do I have time? Can I continue for 5 more minutes?
Please.
Yeah, okay. So I will. So I thought that since Mr. Venkat has already said that he is quite aged, so I thought that how brain, how brain should be treated with aging, or what are the aspects of the brain which we can relate to aging. I will discuss something about it. So aspects of aging. These are all actually available as resources in Dana Foundation's educational resource. You can go to the site and get it. I have acknowledged it in the last slide. You can see that. So, for example, people start thinking as they get old, no, that I am forgetting nowadays. I don't remember the way I used to remember, because they feel like that. But that may not be true, because they start thinking in that way that they forget because they are old. So that is not the way actually it is. It may happen that, for example, if you put a car key in your table and then you don't remember where you have kept it, maybe you will be searching somebody else, and this is not exactly related to your aging. Maybe a person with younger than you can also experience this. So actually we should know, and as I have already described you, this is nothing to do with actually the aging process, because it is not that our neurons deteriorate. We will be showing you certain things, that our cortical density, that is brain mass, how aging alters with age, whether the cortical density reduces, whether the brain mass reduces, white matter reduces, neurotransmission system becomes less efficient. None of these are true, though they may have certain figure, unless your brain is damaged, unless for example your energy is not there. As now the modern thesis is that your energy system is not as efficient, maybe due to prolonged use, but your brain as a whole is not deteriorating. So that should be kept in your mind. So your memory actually, you can increase your memory, or if you feel that your memory is your memory. One thing actually when we get old is that we get impatient. So that is one problem with many of the people. So what is said is that you relax and you will remember. You slow down, you pay attention to it, stay focused. You visualize it correctly. You make associations with it. For example, that flower vase is on the table. So you have to make, this is the way actually people prepare for competitive exams also. They make a mind map and they try to remember a lot of facts. This is one technique. Then maybe you can write it down, you can repeat it. These are the various ways actually in which you can increase your thing. So there are brain aging myth you can forget. You can change your brain. You can. Actually, it is not that we lose thousands of neurons per day. We don't lose. Okay, we don't lose. Our brain is ever increasing. As our experience increases, our brain gets a lot of information, and our brain as a whole, morphologically or anatomically, doesn't change. So all the functional aspects are intact. But maybe some like pruning and tuning, pruning occurs because you may not use a certain aspect. You may not read a certain book. Maybe when you were young, you used to read a lot of books, but now your attention span has gone. You don't read books. So that is some other problem, but it has nothing to do with your brain. Brain doesn't make new cell, it just makes new cell. Don't have this idea that brain is not making new cell, and don't have that idea that memory declines and is even inevitable with age. It doesn't. Memory doesn't decline. The patterns should be kept. The way it has to be kept, I have discussed in the previous slides. So there are certain healthy practices which you can actually do. You can exercise, you can read, you can stay socially connected with people, you can actually manage the stress by various other methods. You can sleep adequately. A person should sleep around 8 hours for a proper person, to any adult to sleep. And all these things, alcoholations and all should be reduced, excess smoking should be reduced. So all these things, there are a lot of do's and don'ts. If we take care of all these things, we should not always get isolated and we say that we will quietly sit in our house and we will not mix to anybody. We are social beings and we have to mix with others. That way actually our brain develops. If you stay inside a house and think that your brain is decreasing, you are forgetting a lot of things. That is your problem. That is nothing to do with your brain. Okay, so you should not think that you get old. That is one thing. So okay, all these things are there. And then there is a lot of studies. Since I have studied little philosophy and I have certain inclination to philosophy, I'll say that there's an aspect, is a part of the philosophy which deals with mind. What is mind? Now, people, with the brain and mind, how? We say a lot of things. It is mental. What is exactly mind? What is the ontology of mind? Ontology in the sense that what is the state of being of the mind? What is a sensation? We have a pain. What does it mean? Okay, we have mental states. What is that state? Whether it is temporal, where it is located somewhere. So all these things have been studied in quite detail. There are a lot of theories. I will not discuss all of them. So I will just say the schools of thought. One is called dualism. It thinks that mind and body. These are all theories. People are pondering on it. Many are rejected today. This dualism is rejected today. But still, it helps us to how our thought process evolved. It helps us to learn that. So mind is distinct from body, and these are two aspects. So they are that is called. So if body is not there, also mind is there. So it is something about superstitious belief. So that is called dualism. Then we have the identity. Our brain and mind. The brain is present and the mind is present in the brain. It is an outcome of the working of the brain. That is the mind-brain identity theory. And a lot of other consequences are there. Behaviorism. So behaviorism actually says that now we can know about your mind by observing your behavior. Psychologically, if we know how you behave in certain situations, we can see how you think. That is the full aspect of behavioring. And there are a lot of sub-theories also. And functionalism has nothing to do with mind, brain and all. It has just aspects of abstracting. What is the functions? How our brain functions and under what situation we have certain inputs and we get certain outputs. And that is the theory of functionalism. And there are a lot of literature out of that. So these are some suggested readings. I feel that you can read all this. You can go to Dana Foundation site. You will get a lot of material. I recommend you to read Telltale Brain, 7.5 chapters, 7.5 aspects of our brain. Thinking Fast and Slow is not a very easy reading, but still you can read before the appendix. Up till appendix it is fine. Then you can read the philosophy of mind if you are interested to understand what are the philosophical aspects. So with this I stop. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can answer.
Thank you so much, Ganguly ji. You rapidly took us through all this thing. There were some reassuring things that despite the age, our brain is not slowing. It's just that we're not exercising it enough. So that is a gratifying take-home message. So one thing I found fascinating was that how you talked about the octopus.
Yeah.
Maybe it will be worthwhile to be reborn as an octopus. So
Yeah.
so we have a psychiatrist with us here, Dr. Manoj Kumar. So he is looking at the other aspects of the brain. You are looking at the normal potential and the physiology, and he is looking at the aberrant behavior of the brain and how it affects this thing. It will be interesting, and I think there's so much of matter that is we can't absorb so much in such a short time. You've been rapidly going through like.
I just gave you a full snapshot of what I wanted to give.
So
can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Please.
First of all, to compliment the speaker, wonderfully put. I've had to learn all this as part of my job, so it's amazing that somebody whose CV doesn't show any indication of the need to know all this is there, and that is exactly what I was going to say. Just all during this talk, I was wondering about Mr. Ganguly's brain. Previously we have been impressed by Mr. Bakchi's brain, but today in a different way I was thinking, how amazing it is, this thing of human brain. We know so little about it. Very, very little do we know. Even that knowledge is fascinating and amazing, as Mr. Ganguly has put it, and as the books he has mentioned, and they all make riveting reading. But the fact remains that we know so little. And that is the most amazing aspect, and what makes each of us different. Mr. Ganguly's interest and the depth of knowledge into so many fields. None of us in this webinar would have a similar brain. So the difference between us is what makes us as human beings, and that is when things go wrong also. It manifests as illnesses, and it is fascinating that we are able to help people also, even despite the complexities of the brain. So thank you, sir, for a very wonderful evening.
Mr. Ganguly.
President, can I ask a question?
Can I?
Please.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Joyan. Now you said the brain makes the decision before we do. Now this has been a fascinating subject for me. The religion says man is created with a free choice. You can drink or you can choose not to drink. You can pray, you can choose not to pray. You can go the right path, you can choose the wrong path. And the brain, we tout as our decision, a decision not made by us but by our brain, even without the inputs, visual, tactile, whatever, or olfactory, whatever. So, do you believe that now you said it? You said it that the brain makes the decision before we do. If that is the case, if we are not responsible for our decisions, are we?
No, see, we can see it in this particular way. It is a good question, actually, you have asked it, and I also thought sometimes regarding this question. So what happens is that, see, brain makes a decision, that is quite. We have so much experiences, how it makes a decision. It's not a magic that brain is making a decision. When a particular event occurs, or when we want to do when we are in a particular situation, based on all the inputs and all the memories, it tries to stimulate us in doing certain thing. So that is the thing. Actually, it is trying to cue us that you do that. But then what happens is that now we have a choice of actually not doing that. We can overcome that particular thing. We can do it. For example, it may happen that for example, I have a killer instinct. For example, there is a murderer. He has a killer instinct. He goes on killing people, and his brain at a particular situation thinks that he can kill a particular person. Let him go and kill that, decides. But then due to his other influences, so there are a lot of areas in the brain actually which are working. It is not one decision is made due to neurons. Neurons have aggregated in its mass, but it is not fixed. We can actually overcome that because there are other things. For example, something says us, some other decision says us that there are two decisions which are coming together, and then based on certain our way we think, way we apprehend, we actually do make a choice. We don't do every time actually what we feel like doing, do we? We don't do it. Sometimes
can I interrupt you there, Mr. Ganguly?
Please.
You say we can decide against the choice made by the brain.
Yeah.
How do we do that? Our decision is the decision of the brain. You cannot decide with your nose or your mouth or with other organs of the body. Your decision has to be made only by using the brain, and the brain is telling you, steal or kill. And then how can you decide against it? You don't have a supplementary brain or an auxiliary brain to decide against the decision of the brain.
No. Then there is actually, see, we get influence with other brains. There is also a particular thing, and see that it is decisions are not unilateral. It is a queuing thing which is given to us that you do a particular action. But then other queuing things can also come. And actually there is a comparison. All things are happening in our brain. It is not that there is nothing called we. There are different parts of our brain. Now certain memories prompt us to do certain things. Certain actions are actually prompted. But then there are certain other things which we might have learned, or we might have heard, or we might have been advised, or we might have been said to do. So that
sorry for interrupting you there, Mr. Ganguly.
Yeah.
That is called confusion. Your brain gives you different suggestions or different opinions, and you are convinced. But here, when the brain makes a decision, that is the decision of the brain. Then there is no confusion.
No. It is not a confusion. It is a choice. Now, you can choose.
What part of my body tells me that the decision made by my brain is wrong and I should choose a different path? Is there any other organ that tells me that?
Yeah, that's what I was telling. See, brain is not formed by a part of
it's a soul
component. There are different areas. Okay, some areas may prompt us to do. For example, visual and auditory things may prompt us to do a particular action. But hearing may prompt us to do certain other action. Both are in the brain. Now which potential is more?
No, there is one,
Mr.
Ganguly, I read somewhere that there have been experiments which show that before you make a decision, like, for example, I want to move my finger. In the brain, however they read the brain, a few milliseconds before I am aware that I am going to move my finger, it's already started in the brain. So where is free will? The experiments show how they read the brain, that this process starts before I am aware that I want to move my finger.
So in other words, you are just implementing the decision made by the brain.
Already the modern viewpoint is we have no free will. There is nothing like free will.
The thing is that, see, different areas are advising different, means they're not advising. There is nothing called advising. Potential of different areas are different.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Through networks.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Even before we decide, before I am aware that I want to move my hand, there are processes going. I started in the brain. Which means there is no free will. If that is true, the experiments have shown that. They do this MRI, whatever they use. So, it has been shown several times. It has been repeated that processes start in the brain, and I'm aware of it only after a few milliseconds or whatever.
I will tell you.
Then that means there is no free will.
I will tell you.
I think what Mr. Ganguly is trying to say is about cognitive dissonance. I know smoking is bad, but I can't do without smoking. that is a cognitive dissonance. I know drinking is bad, but I do drink.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is our actions are already, I mean, the brain decides and then we are aware of it.
No, brain decides, but lot of parts are deciding. It is not that one part is deciding.
No, whatever parts are deciding, the brain has already decided that I must move my hand. So then where is my free will?
I will tell you, there are certain strains.
If I may chip in for a minute.
Please do, Mr. Bakshi.
Yes, actually this question has been discussed in several platforms in several places very interestingly and in exhaustive detail. The question is, this question appears as if there is some kind of destiny, and what Baba sir has said is very much true. It appears as if there is no free will, but even then the modern research says there is. Let me just try to ascertain what it is. Actually, brain is not a thinking device. We think that the brain is for thinking, but it is not. The real purpose of the brain through evolutionary procedure is to decide our body budget, the budget of sugar, the budget of energy, the budget of different kind of hormones. So these are the resources that the brain has to play with. And actually brain only does this. It doesn't think. It decides.
Then where does the free will come in?
Those
are physiological aspects.
Baba, let him speak. Yeah.
Please allow. So this is called allostasis, and that is what the brain controls. The body budgeting, the brain controls. And exactly because of that, the brain starts predicting what would be the most optimum way to deal with a particular situation. And where is that coming from? It is not just that it's a decision taken from some repository. Actually, it is through our experience, we have seen that this probably would be the most energy efficient solution. And that is why brain is trying to take a particular decision. But it is not that decision has got any kind of fatalism. Because at the same time, the sensory data are also getting in there. So there is the free will in this sense that firstly, the brain, whatever is the previous decision, it is not that all the time that will be implemented. If there are stronger sensory inputs, then that decision may change. And that is also being controlled by the brain itself. So it's a mix. It's a complex mix. It's not that always the previous decision is being implemented, and through training I can change my previous experiences and decisions also. If I practice mathematics, my approach to mathematics will change, and I will determine how to approach a particular problem. Similarly, when you are becoming a doctor, you train your brain to take certain decisions in a certain way, and there is the free will. Through your choices, through your practices, you can change your body budgeting, and that body budgeting.
No, Mr. Bakshi, that's not what I'm trying to say. The brain, there are processes going on in the brain before you take a decision. That's the problem.
It is. But it is not that always the same thing will be implemented. It is also being overshadowed by the sensory input.
So anyway, free will is still, many people are still disputing it.
But the free will is a questionable thing.
Yeah. Okay.
What we believe as a psychological free will, probably that is not the real thing.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe that's an illusion. Yeah. So what?
Predetermine the body budget.
So basically, it is an illusion. Basically, it's an illusion.
No, but
there is the other thing.
Mr. Bakshi, I have to choose between buying two cars, a Toyota and a Mercedes. Now this has nothing to do with my body budgeting, my energy budgeting.
It has actually. Your sensory experiences has already determined what would be the most comfortable body budgeting for you, and what you feel as a pleasure choosing the Mercedes or Toyota, what you feel as a pleasure is actually the best possible body budget.
Yeah, Muhammad Ali, that's probably right. But there is another question. Something else I want to ask. There was in that slide, he mentioned qualia. The hard problem of consciousness. how does that arise? I mean, nobody has solved it yet. How do we qualia? What Mr.
I have not discussed
qualia. How does it? I mean, nobody has still been able to solve.
Qualia is actually a psychological and philosophical term. It's not prevalent among neuroscientists or thing.
But it's from the brain it arises.
Yeah, it is actually something to do with mental states. Now there are a lot of theories about qualia in something that what is redness, what is bigness. These are the questions which, what do you mean by red? There is nothing called, see, red is what we interpret as a certain frequency which we get in our mind, or which we understand and which.
Yeah, how do you experience red? Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So that is the state of qualia. That is what is that redness or blueness or bigness or magnanimity. So many metaphors are there. So these are called the mental states. So that is
consciousness, basically consciousness. Yeah. So I think last year's Nobel Prize winner, Roger Penrose, he had a theory that it is not the synapses, it is not the neurons, it is what is within the cell, within the brain cell, microtubules, quantum processes taking place within the microtubules that give rise to consciousness. So that probably also gives rise to qualia.
He believes it's a kind of quantum gravity, but that is also not yet established. We have not.
No, Roger Penrose, we cannot, I mean, one of the greatest mathematical
he is good in physics and thing, but
no, he is also. But brain is physics at the end of the day. What is going on in the brain is physics.
No, I will tell you some experiences which I myself till today could not. I discuss this with Mr. Bagchi also quite frequently. See, suddenly I am sitting somewhere and I thought of a person. I just thought of maybe my mother, my sister or my friend. There is no connection, preview, nothing. I just thought and the phone rang from that particular person. Now I could not find an explanation to this.
But there is entanglement, in physics.
Whatever it is.
Because of that,
I
it is
don't
possible.
know. This I used to actually.
What about the Upanishad? No, the Upanishad talks of 4 consciousness.
Yeah.
Waking, sleeping, what do you call deep sleep? I mean, what do you call it? Yeah, dream sleep, deep sleep, and beyond deep sleep. So, is there any scientific,
No, that there are regarding sleeping. There are a lot of literature available because how our brain behaves due to eye movement. Whether we are having.
No, I'm not talking of sleep. I'm talking of consciousness. Which is
consciousness is very new in the realm of science. It is not yet fully understood. And people have not yet given the importance which maybe it should be given in a due course. So
are there 4 levels of consciousness in science, like in Upanishads?
No. Still now consciousness is not yet discussed in that particular level. I can't. If there is there also, I am not aware of it.
So I think on that note, we will bring this to an end because all of us are married and we know that the day we get married, some of the free will is compromised.
Not from all of it.
Regarding our last question, I would like to mention one thing. The particular book which Mr. Ganguly mentioned, it is called the 7.5 Lessons about the Brain. In that, there is a chapter 4 which specifically deals with this particular question itself. The chapter itself is titled, "Your Brain Predicts Almost Everything You Do." And there, this very world-renowned neurologist, she has explained how it is, and still how the free will is there, still how you have a choice in taking decisions. And what Muhammad Ali sir mentioned very rightly, that any criminal can claim that I have not done it, my brain has done it. So how do I be culpable for such actions? But it is not so. That has been very, very clearly established by the author of this book, that it is ultimately your choice because you are tuning even that predetermination really. So I'll refer you to that particular chapter.
I would just mention XXXYY chromosome or XXY chromosome. I will leave it there.
So I'll send you the link on our group.
On the book.
And Barrett of the book. Okay. Yeah. So PP Secretary. Yeah. Secretary for the word of thanks, please.
And dear President, my fellow Rotarians, a very pleasant evening to you all. Thank you all for your presence in our virtual platform. And we have been very fortunate to have our guest speaker, Mr. Ganguly, who has fascination for all science subjects, especially astronomy, astrophysics, and philosophy. I wish to extend my sincere thanks to guest speaker, Mr. Ganguly, who graced us with his excellent presentation of the subject, brain and mind, some scientific and philosophical aspects. We appreciate Ganguly for sharing his valuable observation and thoughts on this subject. And a special thanks to Mr. Manash Bhagatji, who took interest to join with us as a special guest. Once again, I thank Mr. Ganguly for taking out time from his busy schedule and enlighten us with his knowledge. We are all inspired by your vibrant talk. As usual, I appreciate our Rotary friends for your passion to interact with the speaker. Once again, thank one and all for your virtual presence with us. Thank you and Jai Rotary.